"Do hide from me," the Alpha King growled softly to his trembling Omega bride each night. The twilight sky bled crimson over the kingdom of Valor, casting long shadows across the cobblestone streets of the capital. In the heart of the city stood the great obsidian palace of the Alpha King, Kale, a fortress of dark stone that seemed carved from the mountains themselves. Its towers pierced the clouds, and its walls whispered tales of fear, power, and death. Those who lived within its shadow trembled at the very mention of its master. Yet tonight, the palace was alive with anticipation. Torches flared along the battlements, lighting the way for the rare and forbidden ceremony that would bring brides from across the realm to the king's court. Among them, none shone more brightly with hidden defiance than Leora, the Omega who trembled but did not break. She was escorted through the palace gates by armored guards, her hands bound with silken cords that left no mark but whispered of captivity. Her eyes, wide and alert, took in every shadowed archway, every flickering torch, every stone etched with the sigils of power. A part of her wanted to flee, to vanish into the night air, but she knew such thoughts were dangerous. The palace did not forgive hesitation. The great hall opened before her, cavernous and suffocating, lined with statues of kings long dead, and banners bearing the sigils of Kale's ancestors. The air was heavy with incense, smoke curling in twisting spirals toward the towering ceilings. Around her the other brides, some trembling, some proud, stood like fragile jewels waiting to be claimed. And then he appeared. Kale moved like shadow and fire combined. Every step he took seemed to echo across the hall, resonating deep in the bones of all who watched. His cloak of midnight black trailed behind him, and his eyes, golden and piercing, scanned the assembly like a predator inspecting its prey. His presence alone silenced the murmurs and stilled the hearts of those who dared hope. Leora's breath caught. She felt the pull of something ancient and dangerous in his gaze, something that spoke not just of power but of loneliness, of grief buried beneath the weight of a crown. He was the Alpha King, feared and worshipped, yet there was a whisper of something else beneath the armor of dominance. He stopped in front of her. His gaze lingered longer than necessary, and for the first time Leora felt fear intertwining with a strange, reluctant fascination. "Don't hide from me," he said, his voice low and soft, yet commanding every inch of the space around them. Leora's lips parted in surprise. The words were not a threat, yet they carried the same force as one. She swallowed, her heart hammering. She wanted to pull back to shield herself from him, but something in the depth of Kale's eyes held her in place, as if he could see every secret fear and hope she had tried to bury. The ceremony began. Brides were presented, one by one, and Kale's hand remained near the hilt of the ceremonial sword at his side. His judgment was swift and merciless. Some girls faltered, their hearts exposed to the cold scrutiny of a king who demanded perfection. Leora, trembling yet defiant, met his gaze with a flicker of strength that startled even her. "Interesting," Kale murmured almost to himself. His lips curved slightly, though the smile did not reach his eyes. "You are not like the others," Leora's heart leapt. Was it admiration or a warning? She could not tell. The room seemed to contract around her, the air thick with the weight of destiny, power, and fear. The guards behind her shifted uneasily, sensing the intensity of the silent exchange. After the ceremony, she was taken to the chambers prepared for her, a high room with a tall window overlooking the moonlit gardens. Kale's presence lingered even in his absence, a shadow at the edge of her awareness. She sank to the floor, her hands clasped tightly together, trying to still the tremors that ran through her body. Outside her door, Kale waited. He did not knock. The sound of his footsteps was enough to announce him. When he entered, the room seemed to darken, as if the shadows themselves obeyed him. He stood over her, observing, weighing, testing. "Why do you tremble?" he asked, his voice softer now, almost curious. "Are you afraid of me or of yourself?" Leora struggled to find words. Fear and defiance warred inside her. I am not afraid of you," she whispered. Her voice sounded weaker than she had intended. Kale's gaze did not waver. "Then why do you hide? Why do you cower?" She looked away toward the window, toward the moonlight that felt like the only friend she had left in the world. I do not know who I am," she admitted. "Not here, not in this place." The king knelt slowly before her, the motion deliberate and calm. It was not an act of intimacy, but of focus, of attention. "Then perhaps," he said, "I will help you find out, but you must not hide, not from me, not from yourself." There was an edge to his words, a promise wrapped in warning. Leora shivered, not from cold, but from the intensity of his presence. Something unspoken lingered between them, like a thread pulling tighter with each heartbeat. Days passed, each one more suffocating and exhilarating than the last. Cale would call her to the gardens, to the training halls, to the vast libraries filled with ancient texts. He observed her closely, teaching without revealing too much, guiding without allowing her to see the full scope of his power. Leora began to notice the duality of the man before her. One moment, he was a ruler whose voice could command armies. The next, he was a soul weighed down by grief, eyes flickering with memories no one else could see. It drew her in even as it terrified her. One evening, in the hidden courtyard behind the northern towers, Cale approached her silently. The wind carried the scent of jasmine and wet stone. Leora's heart raced as he stopped a mere foot away, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from him. "Do you feel it?" he asked, his tone almost gentle. "The pull between you and this place, between you and me?" Leora's throat tightened. I feel it," she admitted, her voice barely audible. She did not understand why she had spoken the words aloud, yet once they were said, they hung in the air like a fragile promise. Cale studied her for a long moment. "Good," he said finally. "Fear has its place, but hiding will not protect you. Only understanding, only embracing will." And then, as suddenly as he appeared, he turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Leora alone beneath the moon. She sank to the stone bench, her mind racing with the strange mix of fear, fascination, and longing that had begun to take root inside her. Yet even as she tried to steady her thoughts, a chill ran through her spine. Something ancient and unseen stirred in the palace, an echo of a curse long thought dormant. Leora did not yet know its name, but she would soon. And it would demand everything from her, testing her courage, her heart, and the strange, undeniable bond growing between her and the Alpha King. That night, as Leora lay awake, the words Cale had spoken echoed in her mind. "Don't hide from me." The king's voice was not merely a command. It was a warning, a promise, and an invitation all at once. And somewhere deep in her chest, a fragile flame of hope and fear ignited. For the first time in her life, she wondered if hiding could ever truly save her, or if embracing the shadow and the man who ruled it might be the only way to survive. And beyond the walls of the castle, in the forest where the moonlight dared not tread, something watched. Ancient eyes, older than the kingdom itself, recognized the power stirring in the trembling Omega. It whispered on the wind, a promise of danger and destiny intertwined. She cannot hide, and neither can he. The palace, the king, and the Omega bride all held their breath, waiting for the inevitable collision of fate. The moon rose high over Valor, spilling silver light across the obsidian towers of the Alpha King's palace. Inside, shadows danced along the walls, cast by flickering torches that lined the long, echoing corridors. Leora walked carefully beside Cale, her small hand brushing against the cold stone. The palace, which had seemed suffocating and alien during her first days, now felt like a labyrinth she had to learn, a place where every corner might hide both danger and revelation. Cale walked silently, his presence a constant shadow beside her. He seemed almost carved from the darkness itself, unyielding, commanding, yet not entirely unreachable. For days, he had been observing her, testing her reactions, studying her resolve. Leora could feel his gaze resting on her like a weight she could not shrug off, sometimes comforting, sometimes terrifying. "You have strength you do not yet see," Cale said softly, breaking the silence. His voice, low and controlled, carried the weight of authority and a subtle warmth that made her pulse quicken. "Most who enter this place break under its shadow. You resist." Leora's eyes flickered toward him, her chest tight. "I do not wish to be broken," she whispered. She did not speak of fear, though it sat heavy in her chest. Fear was expected, and yet she had discovered a strange, unfamiliar defiance growing alongside it. Cale stopped at a small archway leading to a hidden courtyard. The walls of the passage were etched with ancient sigils, faintly glowing in the moonlight. He motioned for her to step inside. "Here," he said, "you will learn to see what others cannot. You will learn to sense the truth hidden in the shadows." Leora hesitated. She did not understand the words fully, but there was no room for hesitation. She followed, her heart drumming against her ribs. The courtyard opened to reveal a garden shrouded in mist, trees twisted and dark, their branches bending as if alive. At the center, a small fountain whispered, water glimmering under the silver glow. The air was heavy with the scent of night-blooming flowers, their fragrance both intoxicating and slightly unsettling. Kale moved to the fountain, leaning on its edge, and gestured for Leora to stand across from him. "The palace is alive," he said. "It watches, listens, and waits. Every hall, every shadow, every choice you make matters. Do you understand?" Leora nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She felt the truth in his words, though she did not yet comprehend it fully. Something in the palace responded to her presence, subtle vibrations she could feel in the soles of her feet and in the pulse of the air around her. "Good," Kale said. He took a slow step toward her. "Now let us see what you are truly capable of." He extended his hand, not threateningly, but as if offering her a choice. "Do not hide, Leora, not from me, not from yourself." Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for his, and the instant their fingers touched, a shiver ran through her. It was not fear alone, it was a recognition, a whisper of something ancient within her. The world seemed to tilt, and she felt an invisible thread linking them, fragile yet undeniable. Kale's eyes softened for a brief moment, a crack in the armor of his dominance. "Do you feel it?" he asked quietly. "The pull, the energy that surrounds you." Leora closed her eyes, reaching into the awareness he had awakened. She felt currents of power she did not understand, flowing through her veins and into the courtyard itself. The flowers seemed to stir, the mist swirling as if alive. Her heart raced, a mixture of awe and terror. I feel it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Kale's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then you are ready for the next step." He stepped back, letting her breathe, letting her process what had happened. "But you must remain vigilant. Power draws attention. And there are those who would see you destroyed." Before Leora could respond, a chilling sound echoed through the garden, low, resonant like wind through iron chains. The trees shivered unnaturally and the mist thickened. Kale's posture stiffened, his golden eyes narrowing. "Someone or something has sensed you," he said, his voice now hard and commanding. "Stay close." Leora's pulse quickened. Fear threatened to rise, but Kale's calm presence steadied her. Together, they moved through the garden, Kale guiding her silently, teaching her how to sense the subtle movements of air, the whispers of shadows, the hidden presence of watchers unseen. Hours passed in a silence filled with lessons, not of sword or combat, but of awareness, intuition, and the delicate balance of power. Leora realized that Kale's guidance was as much about trust as it was about control. Every step she took toward understanding the palace, and herself, was a step toward the king, toward the bond that grew in the quiet spaces between them. When they finally returned to her chambers, Leora found herself drained yet strangely exhilarated. The palace no longer seemed entirely hostile. It seemed alive, like a living being she was beginning to understand. And Kale, ever distant, ever commanding, had become something else entirely, a mirror reflecting both her fear and her courage. That night, Kale stood at the threshold of her room, silent. The moonlight caught the sharp lines of his face, and his golden eyes gleamed with intensity. "You did well today," he said softly, "but tomorrow will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine. There is a darkness rising in this kingdom, something older than even my bloodline. You must be ready." Leora swallowed, her throat dry. I will try," she whispered. Kale nodded once, as if satisfied but not yet reassured. "Try is not enough, you must understand. You must embrace." He paused, taking a slow step closer. Leora's breath caught. "Do you understand what that means?" he asked, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate in her chest. "Yes," she said. But even as the word left her lips, she felt the truth of it, the weight of what lay ahead. To embrace meant to confront fear, to confront power, to confront herself. And she knew, deep down, that she could not do it alone. Kale's gaze lingered on her, and for a brief moment his fierce exterior softened. "Then do not hide," he said, echoing the words he had first spoken to her. "Do not hide, and you may yet survive what is coming." The next morning, the palace was already alive with activity. Courtiers whispered, servants hurried, and soldiers patrolled the corridors with silent precision. Leora followed Kale through the halls, observing everything with a new awareness. She noticed the way the walls seemed to shift with her mood, how shadows deepened when she hesitated, and how Kale's presence seemed to command even the air around them. They entered the library, a vast hall lined with books that smelled of old paper and magic. Kale gestured for her to approach a set of ancient tomes. "Knowledge is power," he said, "and in this place, knowledge can be as dangerous as any sword. You must learn to read the signs, to sense the currents, to understand the unspoken rules." Leora's fingers brushed the leather-bound covers, tracing the intricate designs. Some books seemed almost alive, humming faintly beneath her touch. She felt a flicker of her own power responding to them, as if the castle itself was awakening to her presence. Cale observed her closely. "You have more strength than you realize," he said, "and more fear than you admit. Both will be tested soon enough." As they worked together, a subtle shift began to occur. Leora noticed that Cale's fierce dominance was tempered by a quiet patience when he taught her. The walls around his heart, so carefully constructed, were beginning to reveal cracks, small glimpses of the man beneath the king. And in those moments, Leora felt a pull she could neither name nor resist. By evening, the first signs of unease began to ripple through the palace. The shadows deepened unnaturally, and a faint, haunting whisper seemed to echo through the corridors. Cale's eyes narrowed, golden and sharp. "They are coming," he said quietly. "The watchers of old, the ones who have waited for a sign of your power, they will test us both." Leora's breath caught, fear rising. "Us?" she asked, her voice trembling. Cale's gaze softened for the briefest instant. "Yes," he said. "You are no longer alone in this, and yet, do not think that trust will protect you. It may only deepen the danger." That night, as Leora lay in her chambers, she could still feel the energy of the garden, the palace, and Cale himself lingering in her mind. The lessons of the day, the whispers of shadows, the currents of power, the delicate balance of trust, would not leave her. Somewhere deep inside, she knew that the trials ahead would demand everything of her: courage, wisdom, and a willingness to step into the unknown. And beyond the palace walls, in the forests where moonlight barely touched, the watchers stirred. Eyes ancient and unblinking observed her, sensing the power she had yet to control. A presence older than the kingdom itself had marked her, and Cale, for the first time, realized the depth of the challenge that awaited them both. The Alpha King's voice echoed softly in her mind, as if carried on the wind through the halls. "Do not hide from me, Leora. You are already part of a story that will change this kingdom forever." The night stretched on, heavy with anticipation. Leora closed her eyes, feeling the weight of destiny pressing against her chest, and wondered if she could truly embrace the path laid before her, or if the shadows waiting in the wings would consume her first. The palace, the king, and the Omega bride all held their breath, poised on the edge of a storm that was only beginning. The first light of dawn barely pierced the thick fog that hung over the palace of Valor. Inside, the castle was alive with a tension that seemed to vibrate through the very stone. Leora could feel it, a subtle trembling beneath her feet, a sense of anticipation that made her pulse quicken. The watchers Cale had warned her about were no longer distant threats. They were coming, and the castle itself seemed to brace for impact. Cale stood at the top of the grand staircase, his golden eyes scanning the horizon from the massive windows. The early sunlight caught the edges of his black cloak, making him look more like a shadow than a man. His expression was unreadable, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed the depth of his concern. "You feel it too, don't you?" he asked without turning. His voice was calm but carried an undercurrent of warning. Leora stepped closer, feeling the pull of the energy that seemed to hum in the air. She did. It was like a storm beneath the surface of the world, a power that both terrified and exhilarated her. "Yes," she whispered. "Something is coming." Cale finally turned to her, his gaze intense. "Then you must be ready," he said. "Ready to face what you cannot yet understand. Your power, it is awakening faster than I expected, and that draws attention you cannot hide from." The castle gates rattled, a low, ominous sound, as if the walls themselves were reacting to the approach of something ancient. Leora's breath caught in her throat, and for the first time she realized the weight of her own abilities. She could feel the currents of magic in the air, alive and pulsing like threads reaching out toward her very soul. Cale took her hand, firm and steady, grounding her. "You are not alone," he said. "Do not forget that. Whatever comes, we face it together." Hours passed in tense preparation. Guards sharpened blades, mages murmured incantations, and the servants moved quickly to reinforce wards and protections around the palace. Leora followed Cale, learning to sense the subtle shifts of energy, the ripples of unseen power that foretold danger. By afternoon, the first sign of the threat appeared. Shadows deepened unnaturally in the northern courtyard, moving as if alive, curling around statues and creeping along the walls. Leora's pulse quickened. "They're here," she breathed. Cale's jaw tightened. "Then show me your strength," he commanded. "You must not falter." Together, they stepped into the courtyard. Leora could feel the magic in the air thrumming against her skin. The shadows seemed to whisper her name, curling and twisting toward her. Her fear rose, but so did her resolve. She was no longer the trembling Omega who had arrived weeks ago. She was becoming something else, something capable of shaping the world around her. The shadows coalesced into forms, figures darker than night, eyes glowing faintly like embers. They moved silently, circling, testing. Leora's hands shook as she drew in a deep breath, feeling the flow of power inside her. She extended her hand, and a pulse of light flared from her palm, cutting through the darkness like dawn breaking a stormy night. Kale watched closely, his golden eyes reflecting both pride and caution. "Good," he said. "Focus. Do not let fear control you. You are stronger than you know." The shadows recoiled slightly, hissed, and then surged forward again. Leora felt the magic surge through her like a river, powerful and relentless. She closed her eyes and let instinct guide her. Streams of light danced around her, twisting and bending the shadows, forcing them back. For a brief moment, the courtyard was filled with a brilliant glow, as if the sun itself had been summoned inside the palace walls. Kale moved beside her, a silent guardian and guide. Together they formed a circle of power, their bond unspoken but undeniable. The shadows wavered, sensing the connection between them, and then retreated into the mist, leaving the courtyard trembling but intact. Leora sank to the ground, exhausted, her chest heaving. I did it," she whispered, though the words felt fragile. Kale knelt beside her, his hand brushing a lock of hair from her face. "Yes," he said softly, "but this is only the beginning. You are awakening, and the kingdom will not remain passive. Others will come, drawn to your power to test you, to challenge you. You must be ready." The day turned to evening, and the castle quieted, though the tension never left. Leora and Kale spent the night in the training halls, studying ancient texts, learning to control and understand the energy that flowed through her. It was exhausting work, but each lesson deepened the connection between them, weaving trust and understanding where fear had once ruled. As midnight approached, they moved to the hidden garden once more. The mist swirled around their feet, and the air was heavy with anticipation. Kale turned to her, his expression softer now, showing a rare glimpse of vulnerability. "You are changing," he said, "and so am I. I have spent my life alone, guarding this kingdom and carrying its weight. But you make me remember that there is more than fear, more than duty. There is hope and perhaps even redemption." Leora's chest tightened. She had seen glimpses of the man behind the Alpha King, the grief, the loneliness, but hearing him speak so openly was a shock. "Kale," she began, but the words faltered. She did not know how to comfort a king whose life had been forged in shadows and pain. Kale's hand brushed hers, gentle but firm. "Do not hide, Leora," he said again, the words carrying both command and plea. "Do not hide, and I will show you the strength in facing the darkness together." Before Leora could respond, a sudden chill swept through the garden. The mist thickened and faint whispers drifted on the wind, echoing in voices older than memory. Kale stiffened, his hand gripping hers tightly. "They are coming again," he said, his voice a low growl. "The Watchers are patient, but they do not forget. You must remain vigilant, or they will take advantage of even the smallest mistake." Leora swallowed hard, fear and determination warring within her. I will not fail," she whispered. Kale's eyes softened, but his grip remained firm. "Then trust in yourself and trust in me. Only together can we survive what is coming." Suddenly the mist parted, revealing a figure taller and darker than the shadows themselves. Its eyes glowed like molten gold, and its presence radiated an ancient, oppressive power. Leora could feel her energy reacting, pulling toward it, trembling like a leaf in a storm. Kale stepped in front of her, his body a protective barrier. "Do not fear," he commanded. "Stand beside me and let our strength face them together." The figure advanced slowly, silently, and Leora felt the weight of destiny pressing down on her. She extended her hands instinctively, summoning a shield of light that flared and twisted around them both. The Watchers recoiled, but they did not retreat completely. Kale's voice cut through the tension, steady and commanding. "Now, Leora, show them what you are." Summoning every ounce of courage and control, Leora let the energy flow through her. Light and shadow clashed in a brilliant display, twisting and turning as if alive. The Watchers hissed and recoiled, their forms flickering like dying flames. And for the first time, Leora understood the depth of her power and the bond that bound her to Kale. When the last of the shadows dissolved into the mist, the garden was silent, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. Leora sank to the ground, trembling, exhausted, yet exhilarated. Cale knelt beside her, brushing a hand over her hair. "You have done more than survive," he said softly. "You have begun to awaken, and the kingdom will never be the same. Neither will I." Leora looked up at him, her eyes wide. "Cale, what if I can't control it? What if it destroys everything?" Cale's gaze softened, but there was steel behind it. "Then we will face it together, always." The night stretched on, heavy with anticipation and the lingering pulse of power. Beyond the palace walls, the forest whispered with secrets, and somewhere deep in the shadows, other eyes watched, waiting for the next move. Leora knew that the trials ahead would test her courage, her trust, and her bond with Cale. But for the first time, she also knew that she was not alone. And as Cale's voice echoed softly in her mind, she understood the truth of it. "Do not hide, Leora. You are part of something greater. Together we will face the darkness, and perhaps even tame it." The blood-red moon hung low over Valor, casting its haunting glow across the obsidian towers of the Alpha King's palace. Shadows stretched long and dark, twisting around walls and arches as if alive, and the wind carried whispers of ancient power. Tonight, the air felt charged, electric with anticipation and fear. Every corridor, every stone seemed to tremble under the weight of destiny. Leora stood at the highest tower, overlooking the kingdom. Her hands were clenched at her sides, trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the surge of power that pulsed through her veins. She could feel the watchers gathering, their presence pressing in from beyond the palace walls, their ancient eyes fixed upon her. Cale stepped beside her, silent as a shadow. His golden eyes scanned the horizon, sharp and unyielding. Yet when he looked at Leora, the ferocity softened, replaced by a rare vulnerability. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low, almost tender, though it carried the weight of command. Leora nodded, feeling a strange calm settle over her. She had been afraid when she first arrived, afraid of the palace, of the king, and of herself. But she had learned, she had grown. And now, standing beside Cale, she understood that her power was not a curse. It was a gift, one that could protect the kingdom and the man she had come to trust more than anyone. "I am ready," she said firmly. Cale reached for her hand, holding it tightly. "Then we do this together," he said. "No fear, no hesitation, only trust." The watchers appeared first as shadows at the edge of the tower's light. Then they solidified into forms taller and darker than night itself, their eyes burning with an ancient, oppressive glow. The palace walls shook as they advanced, their whispers echoing like the cries of 1,000 lost souls. Leora felt the energy inside her respond immediately. It pulsed, coiled, and surged outward, intertwining with Cale's presence. She extended her hands, summoning a shield of radiant light that stretched across the tower, holding back the shadows. For the first time, she sensed the true bond between them, her power and his presence intertwined, forming something greater than either alone. Cale drew his sword, its black blade glinting under the red moon. He moved with precision, slicing through the shadows as they tested the barrier Leora had raised. Together, they formed a circle of power and protection, their bond palpable, unyielding. "You are stronger than they imagined," Cale said, his voice calm but fierce. "Do not doubt yourself, do not doubt me." The shadows surged again, faster this time, more desperate. Leora felt the strain in her chest, the power threatening to overwhelm her. But Cale's hand on hers grounded her, a tether to reality and to trust. She drew in a deep breath and let the energy flow freely, guiding it with her mind, with her heart. A brilliant wave of light shot from her hands, striking the watchers with a force that made them stagger. Their cries echoed across the tower, and for a moment it seemed as though victory might be possible. But then a single figure stepped forward, a shadow older, darker, and more commanding than the rest. Its eyes burned with the same gold as Cale's, and its presence was suffocating. Cale stepped in front of Leora, his body a shield. "Do not falter," he commanded, his voice strong, resolute. "We face this together." The figure lunged, and for a moment Cale faltered. Its power was immense, far beyond anything he had faced in decades of rule. Leora felt a surge of panic rise, but she pushed it down. She could not falter, not now, not with Cale beside her. She reached deep into herself, into the very core of her power, and unleashed a pulse of light that enveloped both of them. The shadows recoiled, and the figure staggered back, hissing. Leora felt a connection, a thread linking her to the figure, as if it were a mirror of what Kale and she could become if they failed. Her heart raced, but she understood what had to be done. She extended her hands fully, directing all her energy into the figure, not to destroy, but to transform. Light and shadow clashed, twisted, and danced across the tower. Leora's power surged, guided by Kale's presence, and slowly the darkness began to unravel. The figure screamed, not in pain, but in recognition of change. Its eyes softened, and then, with a final pulse of light, it dissolved into mist, leaving only the memory of fear behind. Leora sank to her knees, exhausted, her chest heaving. Kale knelt beside her immediately, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You did it," he said softly, awe in his voice. "You controlled it, you transformed it, I am proud of you." Leora looked up at him, her own eyes shining. "We did it," she corrected, "together." Kale's golden eyes softened, and for the first time his armor of dominance and fear seemed to fall away. He took her hand in both of his, holding it gently. "Yes," he said, "together." The palace was silent now, the shadows gone, the watchers scattered into the night. The red moon began to fade, replaced by the first pale light of dawn. The kingdom was safe for now. But more importantly, something inside both of them had changed. The fear, the isolation, the weight of destiny, all of it had been faced and survived together. Kale stood, offering his hand to Leora. "Come with me," he said. "There is something you need to see." She took his hand, feeling the warmth, the strength, and the trust that flowed from him. Together, they walked to the highest balcony overlooking the kingdom. The rising sun bathed the land in golden light, the first true dawn Leora had ever witnessed since arriving at the palace. "This kingdom," Kale said, his voice soft, reflective, "has known darkness for centuries. I have ruled it with fear, and I have kept my heart locked away. But you have changed that. You have reminded me that there is hope, that there is love, and that redemption is possible." Leora's chest tightened. "Kale, I never imagined I could." She paused, searching for words. "I never imagined I could feel this." Kale's hand brushed her cheek gently. "Nor did I," he admitted. "But you have awakened something in me, something I thought was lost forever, and for that I am grateful." They stood together in silence, watching as the kingdom stirred below, bathed in the warm light of dawn. Leora felt a sense of peace she had never known, a certainty that no matter what challenges remained, they would face them together. Suddenly, a soft wind carried a whisper through the balcony, a voice older than memory, acknowledging her triumph. Leora closed her eyes, feeling the bond of power, love, and trust solidify within her. She knew that the path ahead would not always be easy, that challenges and dangers would rise again. But she also knew that she was no longer alone, and that the Alpha King beside her would not falter. Kale leaned close, his voice a whisper that only she could hear. "Do not hide from me," he said, the words now a vow, not a command. "Never again. Together we will face everything." Leora smiled softly, the fear of her first days replaced by strength and determination. "I won't," she promised. "I will never hide again." Kale's eyes gleamed with emotion, fierce yet tender. "Good," he said, "then come." Together they turned to the palace, to the kingdom, to the dawn. The trials were not over, but they had survived the greatest darkness. And in that survival, in that shared struggle, they had discovered something greater than power or fear. A bond unbreakable, a trust forged in shadows and light, a love that would endure beyond the realm of kings and curses. The sun rose fully now, spilling light over the towers and walls, scattering the last remnants of the night. Leora felt the energy of the kingdom beneath her feet, flowing into her, connecting her to Kale and to the land they had both fought to protect. The world was still vast, still full of challenges, but for the first time she did not feel small or powerless. Kale took a deep breath, his golden eyes reflecting the brilliance of the dawn. "The kingdom is ours to protect," he said quietly. "And together nothing can stand against us." Leora squeezed his hand. "Together," she echoed, and for the first time since her arrival, the palace no longer felt like a prison, it felt like home. The Alpha King and his Omega bride stood side by side, watching the first true light of morning wash over the kingdom. The shadows of the past had been faced, the darkness transformed, and the future stretched before them, full of possibility. Whatever came next, whether whispers of the past, challenges from beyond, or trials yet unseen, they would face it together. Leora had embraced her power, Kale had embraced his vulnerability, and in that union the kingdom found hope once more. The sun rose higher, painting the sky with gold and crimson, a promise of redemption, of courage, and of love that could withstand even the darkest of nights. And the Alpha King whispered one last time, his voice soft but full of certainty, "Do not hide from me, not ever." Leora smiled, no longer trembling, no longer hiding. "Never," she promised. And together they stepped forward into the light, into the dawn, and into a future that was theirs to shape.